iOS. iOS was developed by Apple and first released in 2007 alongside the original iPhone. It's the operating system that powers every iPhone and iPad. Unlike Android, which runs on thousands of different devices from hundreds of brands, iOS is exclusive to Apple. This tight control over both hardware and software is what makes iOS extremely smooth, stable, and well-optimized. Even iPhones that are 5 or 6 years old still receive software updates, which is something most Android phones can't say. One of iOS's biggest advantages is the ecosystem. If you own a Mac, iPad, or Apple Watch, everything syncs seamlessly. You can copy something on your phone and paste it on your iPad. It just works. However, iOS has major downsides too. You cannot customize your home screen freely. You cannot install apps from outside the App Store unless you're in the EU. You cannot easily transfer files without going through Apple's ecosystem. And of course, iPhones are expensive. There's no budget iOS device unless you buy an old one. Oh yeah, another thing, iOS also doesn't have a headphone jack or expandable storage. Apple decided those weren't necessary anymore, and you just have to live with it. Android. Android is an open-source operating system developed by Google and first released in 2008. It's the most popular mobile OS in the world by a huge margin, running on billions of devices from brands like Samsung, MI, Oppo, Vivo, and OnePlus. What makes Android special is freedom. You can change your launcher, install custom icon packs, use third-party keyboards, and even sideload apps from outside the Google Play Store. You can also find Android phones at every price point, from a $50 phone to a $2,000 foldable flagship. But with that freedom comes problems. Not all Android phones get regular updates. In fact, many budget phones never get a single update after you buy them. This leads to security risks and slower performance over time. Another issue is bloatware. Manufacturers pre-install apps you don't want and can't uninstall. Also, because Android runs on so many different hardware configurations, some apps are less optimized than their iOS versions. You might notice occasional lag or stutter even on high-end Android phones. But despite these issues, Android remains the choice for people who want control, variety, and affordability. Tizen. Tizen is an open-source operating system originally developed by Samsung and Intel back in 2012. But here's the thing, Tizen as a smartphone OS is basically dead. Samsung used Tizen on their Z-series phones in a few countries like India and Bangladesh, but nobody bought them. So in 2021, Samsung officially killed Tizen on phones. However, Tizen is still very much alive on other devices. Every Samsung smartwatch before the Galaxy Watch 4 ran on Tizen, and millions of Samsung smart TVs still run on Tizen today. It's actually a very efficient OS for low-power devices. But as a smartphone operating system, Tizen failed because it had no apps. Developers didn't want to build for a platform with no users, and users didn't want to buy a phone with no apps. So unless you're buying a Samsung TV or an older smartwatch, you'll never see Tizen again. ColorOS. ColorOS is not actually its own operating system. It's a custom skin or user interface built on top of Android. Developed by Oppo, ColorOS was first released in 2013. It changes the look, feel, and features of Android while still running Android underneath. ColorOS is known for being feature-rich. It has customizable always-on displays, floating windows, app cloning, and extensive gesture controls. However, older versions of ColorOS were infamous for aggressive background app killing. You would leave an app for 5 seconds, come back, and it would reload from scratch. This saved battery but destroyed multitasking. Oppo has improved this in recent versions, but the reputation still lingers. ColorOS is also very similar to OnePlus's Oxygen OS because Oppo and OnePlus merged their codebases a few years ago. So if you've used a recent OnePlus phone, you've basically used ColorOS. KaiOS. KaiOS is a lightweight operating system designed for smart feature phones. It was first released in 2017 and is based on the now-dead Firefox OS. You've probably never used KaiOS yourself, but it's incredibly popular in developing countries like India, Kenya, and Nigeria. The reason is simple, KaiOS runs on phones that cost as little as $20. These aren't smartphones in the traditional sense. They have physical keypads, small screens, and very little storage. But KaiOS gives them essential apps like WhatsApp, YouTube, Google Maps, and a basic web browser. It even has an app store called Kai Store. The biggest advantage is battery life. A KaiOS phone can last a week on a single charge. It also doesn't require touchscreens or high-speed internet. However, the user experience is extremely limited. You can't multitask, you can't install heavy apps, and the screen resolution is often terrible. But for billions of people who just need calls, texts, and basic WhatsApp, KaiOS is perfect. One UI. One UI is Samsung's custom skin on top of Android. It was first released in 2018 with Samsung's Galaxy S9 series. Before One UI, Samsung had TouchWiz, which was slow, ugly, and hated by everyone. One UI fixed all of that. The biggest feature of One UI is that it's designed for one-handed use on big phones. All interactive elements are placed at the bottom half of the screen, so you can reach them with your thumb. The top half is just for viewing content. One UI also comes with Samsung's own apps like Samsung Pay, Samsung Health, and Good Lock, which lets you customize almost everything. Another advantage is update commitment. Samsung now promises 4 years of Android updates and 5 years of security patches on their flagship phones, which is close to what Apple offers. However, One UI also comes with duplicate apps. You get Samsung Messages and Google Messages, Samsung Internet and Chrome, Samsung Calendar and Google Calendar, and you cannot uninstall most of them. Some people also find One UI's animations a bit slow compared to stock Android, but overall, One UI is considered one of the best Android skins available today. Harmony OS. Harmony OS was developed by Huawei and first released in 2019. Now here's the interesting thing. Harmony OS was created because the US government banned Huawei from using Google's Android, so Huawei had to build their own operating system from scratch. Harmony OS is designed to work not just on phones, but on tablets, smartwatches, smart TVs, and even IoT devices like refrigerators and lights. Everything connects seamlessly through what Huawei calls Super Device. You can drag a music app from your phone to your speaker with a simple gesture. On the surface, Harmony OS looks very similar to Android, can even run Android apps through emulation. But underneath, it's a completely different architecture designed for distributed computing across multiple devices. However, Harmony OS has a huge problem. Outside of China, nobody really uses it. Most global users still prefer Android or iOS. And because of the US ban, Huawei phones don't come with Google Play services, meaning no YouTube, no Gmail, no Google Maps unless you sideload them. So while Harmony OS is technically impressive, it's mostly popular in China. The rest of the world has largely ignored it. HyperOS. HyperOS is Xiaomi's new operating system announced in 2023 to replace their old MIUI skin. But here's the interesting part. Unlike ColorOS and One UI, which are just skins on top of Android, HyperOS is a complete re-architecture. The goal of HyperOS is to connect all of Xiaomi's devices, phones, tablets, smartwatches, earbuds, smart home products, and even Xiaomi's electric car. Everything shares a unified notification system, file transfer, and media playback. On the surface, HyperOS looks very similar to MIUI, but Xiaomi claims it's faster, more efficient, and uses less storage space. However, HyperOS still comes with ads in system apps unless you're in certain regions like Europe. HyperOS is currently rolling out on Xiaomi's flagship phones like the Xiaomi 14 series, and it will eventually replace MIUI on all Xiaomi, Redmi, and Poco devices. But whether it's truly better than One UI or ColorOS, too early to tell. Most people haven't even tried it yet. Graphene OS. Graphene OS is not for regular people. It's a privacy-focused, open-source operating system based on Android. But unlike normal Android, Graphene OS removes all Google services and tracking. No Google Play services, no Google Analytics, no location tracking. Nothing. It's designed for security researchers, journalists, whistleblowers, and anyone who thinks the government or big tech is watching them. Graphene OS is only available on Google Pixel phones because Pixels have the strongest hardware security chip available. You can install it yourself by flashing the OS onto your phone. Once installed, you get a completely de-Googled Android experience. You install apps through the Aurora store or by sideloading APKs. The downside? Convenience goes out the window. No automatic backups, no Find My Device, no seamless app updates, and many apps that rely on Google Play services, like Uber or banking apps, may not work properly. So yeah, unless you're a privacy extremist or a cybersecurity professional, you probably don't need Graphene OS. These are all the operating systems in Mobiles Explained, and I will see you in the next one.